citizens through dialogue and policies that strengthen social solidarity. Therefore, the President takes a very strong dim view on this planned visit to the US to seek secession from South Africa. Our constitutional democracy that we forged in 1994 created a singular non-racial society state that recognizes and protects our unity in diversity. From Musina to Cape Town, we are one democratic society that shall never be allowed to fall under the chasm of race divides. There is no part of our beautiful land that can be allowed to secede. The President cautions everyone to exercise his or her constitutional given right, but to do so in the manner that does not undermine and subvert constitutional democracy in South Africa. We shall all be actively engaged in building a better South Africa in the face of unpredictable geopolitical dynamics. Just to once again revisit the Expropriation Act, because it's getting cited in many communication and even in other parts of the world. The Expropriation Act of 2025 replaces the outdated 1975 Expropriation Act. The aim of this is to align South Africa's land reform policies in line with our democratic constitutional order. The Act is at best designed contrary to its predecessor of the Apartheid 1975 Act, which was geared to serve the apartheid state's interest instead of serving the people. Hence, the apartheid state could easily take land without consideration of the affected property owners. The new Act introduces a transparent expropriation basis that strikes a healthy balance on land reform with legal protections. The Expropriation Act followed all legal prescribed channels to be enacted into law. It was initially passed by was followed by the President's signature, who signed it into law. Therefore, it leaves one to wonder what wrong have we done as a country with respect to this particular act, because we remain a rule of law society and we adhere unwaveringly to the principles of our constitutional democracy. Yesterday, the President had the pleasure to receive the global CEO of SAB InBev, as well as the CEO of South African breweries. And in the discussion, and this aligns with the whole theme around our land reform process, in the discussion, the SAB InBev representatives or executives shared with the President a process that they've been engaged in with respect to supplier development coming out of a land claims process. And so this is recognizing an opportunity to create a sustainable impact. SAB partnered with the Moletele Communal Property Association and the Komati Fruit Group to establish a pioneering community-private partnership in lime farming. The Moletele community, located in Woodspread area, has a deep agricultural heritage and successfully reclaimed land through a settlement process. As part of their ongoing development, the community sought opportunities to maximize the use of their land for economic benefit. Through this CPP, the community-private partnership, the Moletele community provided farmland, Richmond Kopano Farm, previously leased to Komati Fruit Group, In 2020, SAB invested 19 million rands, and Komati Fruit Group contributed agricultural expertise, and the community committed the land and participation. Today, that partnership has made Moletele Corona limes a reality, setting a benchmark for lime farming in South Africa. The farm employs an innovative split block technique to ensure a year-round lime production by simulating different seasonal conditions. The first full harvest in 2023 produced over 1.1 million limes, with all proceeds benefiting the 1,615 Moletele families. The initiative also directly employs 12 community members and indirectly supports up to 55 households. This lime farming initiative exemplifies SAB's commitment and that of government to sustainable agriculture, economic empowerment, and resilient local supply chains, ensuring long-term benefits for business and community. Now, colleagues, such a program will not happen in a country where there is arbitrary land expropriation. Such a program that involves a global company like SAB InBev will not happen in a country where land is taken away from people and so-called human rights violations take place. It will not happen. South Africa has always, post-1994, had an orderly, legal process that has governed land resettlement, land claims, land reform processes, and with the Expropriation Act, we seek to accelerate that process within the confines of our Constitution. And therefore, with such examples that showcases partnerships between government, communities, and global companies such as SAB InBev, we strongly reject any insinuation or assertion that through the Expropriation Act we are committing acts of human rights violations, we are arbitrarily expropriating land. If that was the case, we would not have such a program. A lot has been said about South Africa and Iran relations. South Africa and Iran share historical bilateral relations that date back a few decades ago. Iran is on historic records as having played a critical role and supported the South African liberation movements. One of its leadership, by example, was its severing of official relations with apartheid South Africa in 1979 and imposed a trade boycott against the apartheid regime. The action was a direct protest against apartheid regime's policies. Furthermore, South Africa does not have a sinister relationship with Iran. We do not have a nuclear weapons program with Iran. South Africa abandoned its nuclear weapons program prior to 1994, and that was a program that was managed by the apartheid government. The dismantling of that program was verified by the United Nations. By the time a democratic government took over the leadership of this country, in 1994, South Africa had ceased in engaging in any form of nuclear capacity development for weapons purposes. And again, we will reject the assertion that we have a sinister program with Iran that's aimed at generating some form of nuclear weapons program or capacity for South Africa. We're not involved in that. And there's evidence to that point, and we'll challenge anyone who asserts otherwise to provide evidence to that effect. In the absence of evidence, we caution media colleagues with respect to how that story is reported. In the absence of evidence, we will reject any assertion or any claim for that matter that you are involved in some kind of sinister relationship with the government of Iran and that we are involved in the development of nuclear weapons. On the remaining on the renaming of Sandton Drive, the government is engaging with the City of Johannesburg regarding the renaming of the Sandton Drive street. This is part of the needed consultation process, which is also prescribed within our statutory procedures. It further encourages a transparent process that invites the public to have a view that is expressed openly. It is also part of the intergovernmental cooperative process. As it stands, government has a historical mandate to rename the streets in South Africa to reflect and set apart the new dispensation from the old one. The renaming of streets remains one of our democratic society's redress of the past injustices of colonialism and apartheid. However, we recognize the diplomatic sensitivities around the renaming of Sandton Drive, particularly with the United States of America. It is for this reason that national government, through the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, is in talks with the City of Johannesburg. The purpose of these talks is to agree a process that will allow the national executive to manage the diplomatic tensions with the United States without further inflaming the situation. With respect to Ambassador Rasool's imminent arrival back to South Africa, we would like to urge all political formations that are planning various homecoming rallies for Ambassador Rasool to assist us and refrain from partaking or engaging in action that may seem inflammatory and that may worsen the already volatile diplomatic relationship with the United States. And now just quickly to run through the program. The President tomorrow will attend or undertake a working visit to the Republic of Namibia to attend the inauguration of the President-elect, Mrs. Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah. The inauguration ceremony, which coincides with Namibia's 35th Independence Day, will take place tomorrow on the 21st of March at the Independence Stadium in Windhoek. The President's attendance of the inauguration of President-elect and the current Vice President will provide an opportunity to reaffirm the strategic nature of the cordial bilateral relations between South Africa and Namibia and further consolidate bilateral cooperation between the two countries. South Africa and Namibia enjoy excellent bilateral relations due to the deep fraternal and historic relationships cemented during the fight against colonialism and apartheid. Namibia's stability and interrelated ties with South Africa make the country a natural strategic partner not only in the SADC community, but also in the broader African Union context and globally. President Ramaphosa is looking forward to working closely with the new President of Namibia and the government to advance mutual political, economic interest and the integration of the African continent. Both countries pursue Africa's renewal, South-South cooperation, and the promotion of a rules-based international system. At the invitation of the Department of Water and Sanitation, President Ramaphosa will on the 27th of March address a water indaba. The indaba follows a water summit with all water services authorities that was held in January of last year. The National Water and Sanitation Indaba will adopt a turnaround strategy that will align the imperatives of the 7th administration within their Great Medium-Term Development Plan of 2025 to 2029, as well as Operation Vulindlela version 2.0, the strategic objectives of the Indaba to ensure implementation and delivery model of water and sanitation, financial sustainability, improve capacity of water services authorities, and build strong partnerships. Still on the same day, on the 27th of March, the President will receive letters of credence from heads of mission at a credential ceremony to be held at the Sefago Makgatho Presidential Guest House here in Pretoria. Letters of credence are official diplomatic documents presented to the President by heads of mission who have been nominated by their respective governments to serve as ambassadors to South Africa. The President will receive heads of mission from the following 14 countries: the Republic of Gabon, the Republic of Congo, the Russian Federation, the People's Republic of Bangladesh, Canada, the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the Republic of Turkey, Japan, Mongolia, the Republic of Portugal, the Republic of Panama, the Federal Republic of Nepal, and the Republic of Senegal. On the 28th of March, the President will deliver the keynote address at the Women Economic Assembly, WECONA, that will be held at the Forum in Sandton. The President launched the inaugural WECONA on the 6th of October in 2021. It is a platform where the private sector, civil society, and women's organizations, businesswomen, and government have partnered to form an initiative to facilitate the participation of women-owned businesses in the core areas of our economy. The initiative emphasizes the participation of women-owned enterprises in industry supply and value chains to foster sustainable economic development. Among others, the Assembly will activate, coordinate, and monitor government and private sector actions towards preferential procurement for women-owned businesses. On the 3rd of April, President Ramaphosa will receive His Excellency Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, the President of the Republic of Zambia. This will be President Hichilema's first official visit to South Africa since taking office on the 24th of August 2021. The purpose of this visit is to further strengthen the historical and cordial bilateral relations that exist between the two countries. On the 9th of April, the President will open and address the Police Summit at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research campus in Pretoria. The inaugural Police Summit takes place under the theme Efficiency in Action, Optimizing South Africa's Policing Potential, aligning with Chapter 12 of the National Development Plan on Building Safer Communities. The summit will address high levels of crime in South Africa by reflecting on current policing approaches and developing more effective methods for the South African Police Service. To achieve the 2030 NDP objective, the three-day summit will focus on enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of SAPS in combating crime. It will also cover 4 broad themes with related breakaway sessions focusing on visible policing, detective services, and crime intelligence. The Police Summit will have an attendance of experts, practitioners, who will have the opportunity to share critical views, ideas, building networks for advancing social justice. It will also facilitate engagement with various stakeholders, learning from good practices and participating in discussions on key criminal justice policy development. On that same day, on the 9th of April, following the address to the Police Summit, the President will then tour the Center for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, and be taken through CSIR's flagship programs. The President will be accompanied by Minister of Science and Technology and Innovation, Dr. Bonginkosi Nzimande. The CSIR boasts the single largest collection of some of South Africa's top scientists and researchers, many of whom have won top international awards and specialize in a number of unique and critical emerging areas such as nanotechnology, biotechnology, and 4IR-related technologies. The CSIR is a strategic national asset that is essential for unlocking South Africa's scientific capabilities in a number of strategic areas and addressing national priorities. With its capable world-class scientists and pioneering innovation, the CSIR is primed to tackle the ambition of attaining United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and meeting objectives of the National Development Plan. And then lastly, on the 9th of April, again, the President will join the International Association of Women Judges Conference, themed Resilience, Women in Leadership to End Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. The conference will be taking place in Cape Town, and it will be hosted by the South African chapter of International Association of Women Judges, and it's a pivotal event that will bring together judges, legal professionals, and partners from around the world. So colleagues, let me end there for now. If there are any changes on the President's schedule, we will share those through various updates and media advisories. And I'm happy to take questions at this stage. Thank you. Amanda.
Morning, Mr. Magwenya. Thank you so much for your time. I have 3 questions. The first is, a day or two ago, the US President Donald Trump said South Africa, quote unquote, was on a watch list. Is the President concerned about this seemingly threatening language that's being used against South Africa? On the ambassador, can you confirm when he'll be arriving back from the States? I think it was said 23rd of March. Is that the case? Also, while you can't speak about the replacement, can you confirm that the process has begun to identify an individual that's going to replace the ambassador? And what are the things that the President is considering in choosing this person? And has the Presidency been informed about who's going to replace Ambassador Ruben Brigitte? Thank you.
Okay. Amanda, of course, the President is concerned about the current state of relations with the United States. And the President is on record saying he will lead the intensification of engagements between ourselves and the various levels of the Trump administration to iron out whatever issues that there are. There seems to be a number of issues that are of concern from Washington, and the President is keen to have those issues addressed. Equally, the President is keen that we look at the opportunity to research the relationship between South Africa and the United States, particularly on the trade front, where there are a lot of opportunities to expand the trade relationship. The TTIC is leading a process to look at that basket of tradable goods and look at how we expand it, so that at an appropriate time, when we begin to have escalated engagements between ourselves and the Trump administration, we're able to also take a more forward-looking approach to the relationship, rather than being stuck in a series of protests about things that have been said in the past or things that are being currently said. What we will do, as I've just done now, is to continue correcting distortions where those distortions are being reported from an official level out of the United States. Parallel to that, as I've said, the President is leading that intensification of engagements with the Trump administration to ensure that we are able to engage at the right level and we are able to iron out whatever differences that may exist. But yes, it is a concern that the state of the relationship is where it is, and it is the focus of the President to work towards improving the state of the relationship. With respect to when Ambassador Rasool is arriving back to the country, just double check that with Clayson. He will know. With respect to the appointment of the new ambassador to the United States, South Africa's ambassador to the United States, the president is not going to rush that process. He's applying his mind. In fact, the president appreciates the numerous messages that he's received. He's been inundated by messages from people volunteering themselves to be posted in Washington, from people making suggestions of individuals to be considered for Washington. However, the president is going to take his time in considering his options with regards to this appointment. The absence of an ambassador in Washington does not mean the absence of engagements with the Trump administration. Equally, just as you have here in South Africa, the US has not appointed an ambassador yet, but we've been able at various levels of government to continue to have engagements with diplomats from the US Embassy. Similarly, in our case, we will continue having engagements with the Trump administration without an ambassador. It's not a process that the president wants to rush. It's a process that he wants to carefully apply his mind on against the prevailing conditions, as well as against the opportunities that we see further down the line from an improved relationship with the Trump administration. Has the president been told about a U.S. ambassador replacement to South Africa? No, he hasn't. From our own distant observation, the process on the U.S. side is yet to take place formally in terms of a nominee that is presented by President Trump and interviewed or to go through the congressional sort of process. And so we will be watching that process like everybody else, but there's been no formal communication to the president on that process. In fact, there's no need for that formal communication. The U.S. has its own process of appointing ambassadors. They will embark on that process, and we will await the announcement when they've concluded that process. Thank you, Amanda. Kanita.
Thank you very much, Vincent. Just to pick up on Amanda's questions, has the president communicated with his party with regards to having these rallies welcoming Ambassador Rasool? And will Ambassador Rasool be deployed elsewhere, or his service as ambassador has come to an end when he returns home? You're saying that the president will lead engagements. Does that happen behind closed doors? Is there any planned meetings in the next month the president will have with regards to these engagements that he is going to lead with restoring the diplomatic relations with the U.S.? And then just to confirm, President Zelensky will be in South Africa on the 10th of April. Is that still going to happen? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kanita. Yes, indeed, the president will be engaging the leadership of his party with respect to the expected and envisaged conduct during any form of homecoming rally for Ambassador Rasool. What we are urging is just some kind of restraint, recognizing the kind of prevailing conditions with respect to our diplomatic relationship with the United States. What we would not like to see is further inflaming the situation and creating more difficulties around what is already a challenging situation. And so, indeed, the president will be having those engagements with his party's leadership in that regard. Will Ambassador Rasool be redeployed? I don't know. The president is expecting a report from Ambassador Rasool on his time in the United States leading up to the incident that has seen his expulsion. Upon that discussion, the president will then apply his mind accordingly. So I can't confirm or deny whether he will be deployed or not. With respect to the point I made earlier on, I said, Kanita, the president is leading the intensification of engagements. In other words, maybe I should have used the word he's guiding, because he's not directly involved, but he's guiding that process with respect to the kind of outcomes he would like to see, as well as the acceleration of that process. We can't go on for more months with this kind of diplomatic stalemate between ourselves and the United States. The sooner it's resolved, the better it is for everybody concerned. Is President Zelensky still confirmed to be in South Africa on the 10th? The visit has been moved to the 24th of April. President Zelensky is still confirmed to visit South Africa. However, the visit has now been moved to the 24th of April at the request of President Zelensky and the Ukrainian government, owing to his schedule currently. Thank you, Kanita. Yes. Vitaly.
Good morning.
Good
Vitaly
morning,
Markov
Vitaly.
from TASS News Agency. The question about Ukraine. How does President Ramaphosa assess President Trump's efforts to bring peace to Ukraine, and whether these actions are in line with the African initiative and Zelensky's upcoming visit to South Africa? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Vitaly. Vitaly, in a way, there is some alignment between South Africa and the United States, or rather between President Trump's position and that of our government and that of the president, that war needs to end as soon as possible. And this is the position that South Africa has held from the beginning of that conflict. And President Trump has aligned with that position. I'm not going to offer any commentary with respect to how he's decided to lead that process, except to say, in principle, we are in agreement with the US, with President Trump, on the need to expeditiously get a peace process going so that we could see an end of that conflict. And that does align with the position of South Africa, as well as the articulation of the Africa Peace Initiative, when those 6 or 7 leaders from the African continent visited Kyiv as well as St. Petersburg for talks with both presidents. The message was the only road to peace is that of dialogue. And we're seeing a gravitation towards that message, which our continent and our country articulated at the very onset of that conflict. And so in a way, we are pleased that there is a process that seeks to bring the parties together. We welcome the fact that very soon we will see talks ensuing between the two warring parties. Ours is to support that process and call for that process to be as inclusive as possible of all parties that have a stake in seeing peace, not only between Ukraine and Russia, but also in Europe, as well as the rest of the world. With respect to President Zelensky's visit, I didn't get your question exactly there, Vitaly, but I'm assuming what will be the engagements? Okay, the engagements are going to be over 2 areas, really. One is to express the support to a peace process and offer South Africa's availability and willingness to facilitate in whichever way, if required to do so. The President will be ready and willing to provide that kind of support. Secondly, we are looking beyond the conflict. If there's already an effort to get peace talks underway, we are looking beyond the conflict where we can start cementing closer bilateral ties with Ukraine and look at various areas of cooperation between ourselves and Ukraine. I think I've covered all your questions, Vitaly. Samgelo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Magwenya. Quick questions. Is effectively President Ramaphosa calling on his political formation that is planning that homecoming rally at the Cape Town International Airport to cease, to stop having that particular rally? Are you saying that your provincial leadership in the Western Cape, led by their head of deployees, that would be Vincent Magwenya, who's also the chief whip in the National Assembly, to refrain from having any sort of homecoming rally for Ibrahim Rasool this weekend on Sunday when he arrives. Then secondly, on the United States of America, are you as the South African government effectively pulling back on posting an ambassador and playing the fighting game as the United States is also holding back on deploying an ambassador to South African soil? Are you holding back because of the actions that the United States of America has deployed upon South Africa? Then lastly, on the issue of Iran, it is no secret that President Ramaphosa is the one who negotiated for Iran to be included within the BRICS fold of countries. When the Iranian Prime Minister was on his way to South Africa, the President was instrumental in those particular negotiations. Is President Ramaphosa seemingly leaning more to the Eastern Bloc of countries and moving away from the West? Because if you look at the current political economy of the world, it does look like the Eastern Bloc is the future economically, as opposed to the Western countries and to the United States of America. Is South Africa moving closer to the East, looking that China is now our biggest trading partner, followed by the EU as a bloc, then America would come in as third? Thank you.
Sure. So the ask is quite simple. The president is not saying to his party, stop having a homecoming rally for Ambassador Rasool. The president is saying, exercise restraint, recognize where we are in terms of our relationship with the United States, support our efforts to resolve this current diplomatic stalemate, do not engage in any action or utterances that will further inflame the situation. It's a very simple ask. He's not asking them to stop welcoming Ambassador Rasool, but he's saying, please, be considerate of what he's trying to manage at the moment, and be considerate of what is at stake with respect to the country's economy, with respect to doing our level best to retain that strategic partnership with the United States, and hopefully even be able to engage in a revised trade framework between ourselves and the United States. That's the ask from the president. With respect to holding back appointing an ambassador, no. We're not adopting a posture of fighting the United States. Our posture is a constructive posture. And so where untruthful things are said about South Africa, we are obliged, we are duty-bound to correct them. With respect to forging a closer relationship and sailing through or navigating through this current bumpy patch, our posture is more of a constructive one. We do not seek a fight with the United States, and therefore the appointment of the ambassador, or rather whatever time the president takes to decide and appoint the ambassador, has got nothing to do with a posture that we are adopting towards the United States. What is important here is that the president doesn't want to rush this appointment, because we have, a very fluid situation. Almost every week there is public communication that we see and that we receive. It's going to be important that when the ambassador is deployed in the United States, we are in a situation where there's been some engagements, but at this stage, the president feels that it will be prudent to just take his time, work on the other engagements that we're having, and at the right time, then proceed with the appointment of the ambassador. The prevailing conditions are fluid, Samgelo. They're changing by the day, and it doesn't help to rush the process at this stage. Iran inclusion in BRICS, and South Africa gravitating towards the east and moving away from the west. As you know, Samgelo, BRICS is a consensus organization, and so we had a number of countries that had applied to join BRICS. the members of BRICS at the time consulted each other and agreed not only on Iran, but on a number of countries that joined at that particular time. And so I wouldn't say the focus was getting Iran exclusively into BRICS. We had a number of countries, and there were negotiations over those countries, and BRICS members then agreed to include Iran. Are we leaning towards the East? Samugelo, the president is on record saying our foreign policy posture is to maintain friendly relations with all nations of the world. We are an enemy of none, and we hold no brief from anyone to be an enemy of any other country. And that's the position we've maintained. You will recall that some of the criticism that we received at the onset of the Russia-Ukraine conflict was the so-called perceived closeness to Russia. And we maintained a non-aligned position with respect to that conflict. We still do maintain a position of non-alignment. And so we will never allow ourselves to be swayed in favor of either or other global power. Next question. It's a gentleman wearing a cap here.
Thank you. I'm Gaurelo Magolego from UFM.
Nice to meet you, Jorge.
Yes, regarding the secession movement in the Cape, this movement is led by a gentleman by the name of Bill Craig, who came to South Africa as a fully fledged adult, gained citizenship at some stage. So there was even a call at some stage to say, why can't we revoke his citizenship? So I'm trying to find out if there's any action that the government can take by law against persons like this who were hosted but then are seemingly abusing their hospitality. Similarly, why hasn't the government taken any action, particularly laying charges against AfriForum, seeing that the misinformation that they are driving is not a new thing they have been doing, but now that the impact has become this big, what is preventing the government from taking action in the form of laying criminal charges against them? And then as I proceed, I just have two more. Regarding, there's a gentleman, a journalist by the name of Joel Pollack, a journalist who has declared himself a front runner to becoming the next ambassador to South Africa. Does the government has an opinion on this man, considering so many pieces that he has written, including by against the expelled ambassador Rasul? Is this a desirable person? And lastly, there's an argument that for South Africa to host President Zelensky at this time may be perhaps suicidal or unwise, considering that he has been weakened and he's been ridiculed by the US, that is currently also being aggressive against South Africa, that there may be implications for hosting him at this time. Just your comment on that one. Thank you.
Okay. Gaugelo, Phil Craig is not a citizen of South Africa. He's still a permanent resident, and he is yet to be naturalized. So he's not a citizen of South Africa. And to your point, indeed it is a concern that somebody who's left his own country of birth has come to South Africa to sow seeds of division, as he has been doing. But on the other hand, you will recall that they tried to register for these last general elections, and they couldn't obtain enough signatures. So they do have very limited representativity. What is of concern to us is the sort of perpetuation of distortions about our country. So whoever that will welcome him in the United States will need to know that he's not a South African citizen. He is a permanent resident, and he is yet to be naturalized. It is perplexing as to why he's seeking South African citizenship when his views or his intentions are to divide the country. But having said earlier on, we will not allow him to do that. He can travel the world seeking support for his secession ideas. It will not happen now, and it will not happen any other time. With respect to AfriForum charges, there are other parties that have undertaken to do that. We will observe how that process proceeds. Joe Pollack, yes, we've observed with concern that a person that is seeking to represent the United States in South Africa has also engaged in a series of damaging behavior against South Africa. We will wait to see if he gets nominated, if indeed he gets appointed, and we will take things from there. But it is a concern that he seeks to represent the United States here. We're not quite sure what his intentions will be, because so far he is engaged in a very divisive and very damaging manner towards South Africa and towards South Africa-related issues. Is it suicidal hosting President Zelensky because of the reception he received in Washington? No, it's not. We've been engaging President Zelensky for the past 2 years, if not more, right? And at some point, South Africa was one of 1 or 2, 3 countries that had the capacity to speak to both President Zelensky and President Putin. The United States, up until President Trump, did not have a channel or was not speaking to President Putin, and we were able to have conversations with both of them in terms of the president engaging with both of them. And so we see President Zelensky's visit as a continuation of our efforts to try and bring about a peaceful resolution to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. It would be disingenuous of us and of the president to suddenly now discard or distance himself from any engagement with President Zelensky, when all along President Ramaphosa has been engaging with President Zelensky, engaging over a need to begin a peace process to resolve that conflict. And so we don't see it that way. However, we see it as a continuation of the engagements we've held. The last meeting they held was in Davos, where they had a bilateral meeting and the visit was confirmed. Last year they met on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly, again on a similar theme around a peaceful outcome out of that conflict. And so the only difference now is that engagement will be held in person on South African soil. That's the only difference, but it's a continuation of a series of engagements. When Minister Lavrov was here for the G20 foreign ministers meeting, the president held a bilateral meeting with him, or received a courtesy call from him, and they discussed the question of peace talks, and they also discussed the fact that President Zelensky will be visiting South Africa. There's been no issue or objection on the side of Russia, for example, to object to that visit, because it's seen as a continuation of the engagements that we've been having with both parties. So no, it will not be suicidal in any fashion. And President Trump is still talking to President Zelensky. I saw this morning that there was a call, and I'm expecting to see a statement in a short while affirming that call between the two of them. And so why would we not speak to President Zelensky when President Trump and everybody else is still engaging President Zelensky? Thank you. Gert, and then Mr. Shazi here. Gert.
Thanks for the opportunity, Vincent. I just wanted to know, will the government be telling the Metro Council of Joburg not to rename Sandton Drive in honor of Leila Khaled? And then the other question, all these delegations going to the USA, I see even Urania wants to send a delegation to the US. Isn't that inflaming the already tense situation with all these delegations going over to the USS and spreading lies and stuff and disinformation? So that's also inflaming the situation, isn't it?
No, it is. It is inflaming the situation, Kharch. But on the other hand, our American counterparts will use their own discretion with respect to how they engage parties that are seeking to divide South Africa, that are seeking to return South Africa to a period that we've long passed, one that's still deeply etched in our DNA in terms of its painful history. And so we'll leave it to our counterparts in the US to decide how they engage these parties. As a government, we can't stop people from boarding an aeroplane and flying to a destination. But at the same time, we will reiterate the message that these groups who are heading to Washington do not represent the majority of South Africans, whether it's the Orania movement or it's AfriForum or it's this independence, Cape Independence advocacy. They do not represent the majority of South Africans. In fact, even AfriForum does not represent the majority of Afrikaans-speaking South Africans. We know that for a fact. So it's up to them how they receive these delegations. But yes, it is a concern for us. What we'll rather have is have people engage here in the country over whatever issues that they may have. But we take comfort in the fact that the majority of South Africans have rejected the divisive stance that has been taken by these organizations. Is the government telling the city of Joburg not to rename Sandton Drive? No, that's not the tone we are taking. We are operating within the constitutionally provided intergovernmental cooperative framework here. And we are saying to our colleagues in the city of Joburg, we have a major diplomatic situation that we are managing and that we need to manage. Please support us, cooperate with us in managing this situation. Do not engage in any action that will further inflame the situation. Look at how you can manage your processes in such a way that as President Ramaphosa and his administration manage this situation, we're not adding more issues that will further complicate our engagements with the United States. So at the end of the day, it's a very logical appeal that we are making in our talks with the city of Johannesburg, something that we believe the city is going to be receptive to. We have no reason to believe that the city will not heed our plea in this regard. Everybody who's observing what has been happening can realize or does realize that there's a lot at stake. We are dealing with a very unusual sort of diplomatic challenge, and we need to do so in a manner that is not undermined by other areas of government or other formations of society, because we all have something to lose here. If this relationship breaks down with the US, we all have something to lose, and so nobody can behave as if they are an island and they're not going to be impacted in some way or the other. Oh, yes, sir.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's Michael Mbewe from the SABC's Channel Africa. Mr. Magwenya, I'll start by commenting, quoting a quote by Jeffrey Sachs. I think you're familiar with him. He was addressing the EU Parliament immediately after being kicked, Zelensky being kicked out of the White House. He was a former Democrat senator, and I found it very concerning with this quote where he tells the EU that the wars we are witnessing were pre-planned by the US 30 to 40 years ago. The wars in Syria, Afghanistan, Libya, Sudan, Somalia, and of course the Ukraine. One wonders why the world at large is failing to stop the US with its continued impunity, and how can SA, along with other nations, mobilize at the UN Security Council to call on the US to stop supporting wars, conflicts, and arming sides. We see the devastating effects that these wars are causing in Palestine, and then also in just here in Africa, in DRC, and also in Sudan. My second question is if the diplomatic role between the South African government and US goes further down, is South Africa ready to move on without the US?
Let me start with your last question. We will get through this bumpy patch with the United States. That we're quite certain of. There's not going to be a time where we're going to move on. No. Remember what I said earlier on and what the President is on record having said before. We seek to maintain friendly relations with all nations of the world. And we'll continue to do that. So there's never going to be a time where President Ramaphosa directs his government to move on. No, there's never going to be a time. It will not be in anyone's interest, by the way, including the United States, to adopt that posture. And so, no, there will never be that time. No matter how long it takes for us to resolve these issues, we will stay the course and we will resolve them. South Africa is a strategic partner to the US. We are the largest importer of American goods in Africa. It is impossible to imagine a world where South Africa and the US do not have a constructive relationship. And so we see this as temporary, and we see this as an opportunity to reset the relationship. And so there's never going to be a time where we say we're moving on. Your first question is more of commentary than a question. So I'm not going to comment on what Jeffrey Sachs said. Everybody knows who he is and knows his views. And I'll leave that to you as an astute newsman that you are to formulate your own opinions out of Mr. Jeffrey Sachs' presentation. Thank you.
Good day, Nkosinathi Shazi from Power FM News. Just two quick questions. The Democratic Alliance has requested President Cyril Ramaphosa to send a GNU delegation to the United States. I remember earlier this year the President did indicate that governments would send a delegation. So will the GNU be sending a delegation? And secondly, the DA has also called for an overhaul of South Africa's foreign policy. So they are kind of insinuating that the ANC, without its majority, is calling all the shots. So when it comes to matters of international politics, does the President consult his GNU members, or do those decisions lie solely with himself? Thank you very much.
We don't know what's wrong with South Africa's foreign policy. Maybe at some point the DA will point that out and will articulate it a lot better. Recently, Mr. Shazi, you'll recall, the President hosted two presidents of the European Union. One European Union Council, and the other one, the European Union Commission. And several agreements were announced, including an investment of over 90 billion rands. And so a country that could be said does not have a proper foreign policy will not be engaging at that level with continental Europe. I'm just giving you one example, right? If you look at the spread of our trade relationships around the world, again, they demonstrate a country that has a very solid foreign policy, a country that is very consistent with respect to how it implements and manages that foreign policy. We have a bumpy patch with one country. It therefore cannot be said that because of that bumpy patch, our foreign policy requires overhaul. I think what is important for everybody to recognize and accept, including the DA, is that foreign policy remains in the remit of the President's responsibility. Should he decide that he wants to share that responsibility with anybody, he will do so. But at this stage, there is no evidence that says our country's foreign policy is counterproductive to our national interest. There's no evidence to that effect. And we're not going to engage over the overhaul of foreign policy just because we are going through a diplomatic bumpy patch with one country. That we're not going to do. We're going to focus, obviously, on resolving that diplomatic issue, as I've said, and as the President has said numerous times, but that doesn't call for a revisit of our foreign policy. With respect to the President dispatching a delegation to the United States, we've said again, the timing is not ideal at this stage. The President is on record saying he does not want to send a delegation to the US that will go to explain ourselves. There's nothing we need to explain. There are no land grabs in South Africa. We're not engaged in any sinister relationship with any country. And we believe, by the way, all these issues are known. Contrary to what gets communicated, we believe these issues are known. So the President feels there's nothing that we need to explain. What we need to do is to look at how we take the relationship forward with the United States. If they have concerns, we can address those concerns, but we are more interested in researching that relationship. It would be more prudent when we have something more substantive and tangible in terms of a trade deal proposal for a delegation to then go to Washington and place that trade deal proposal before the Trump administration. But to just send a delegation now to do what and say what? When some of these issues that have been raised via social media are issues that we believe are known. There are no human rights violations taking place in South Africa. I was in Cape Town recently with the President, and often I exercise by walking along the promenade, the Sea Point promenade, and the President does the same, but we do it at different hours because it's time to kind of distress and relax. And one of the things you observe when you're walking on that promenade is the amount of foreign nationals that are visiting South Africa. I mean, you hear through accents as you pass people, as they pass you. When you go right towards the end, there's a place called the Saunders Rock Beach, which on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning, you will find packed with people of all races, of all nationalities, enjoying the beauty and splendor of Cape Town and South Africa. So in a country where there is victimization and human rights violations against a particular race, you will not see that. You will not see that. Next time when you're in Cape Town, Mr. Shazi, take some time and walk along the Sea Point promenade, and you will admire how South Africa is host to foreign nationals from literally every corner of the world, and how people are enjoying not only the beauty and splendor of our country, but they're enjoying the kind of constitutional democracy that we have. I'll even go as far as saying they're enjoying even constitutional democratic protections that our Constitution offers. And so we don't need to over-explain that part, but we are interested in engaging over a substantial new trade deal proposal and engage over how do we take the relationship forward, engage over areas of alignment that you already have with the United States, and we do have a couple of them where there's a great deal of cooperation between ourselves and the US, and we want to take that cooperation forward and even further. I think I've answered all your questions, Mr. Shaz. You happy? Okay. Colleagues, I think that brings us to the end of this media briefing. And I've held you for longer than I promised. So you need to now rush to GCIS. Thank you.